Okay, so today I'm going to be doing a recommendation video for feel-good books. It's the beginning of the year. I'm wanting to start my year on some books that are just cozy and warm and feel nice. So I thought I'd do a recommendation for some of those in case someone else is feeling that way too. I did post on Instagram asking what a feel-good book means to you, and I also did a typo in it, which people had a heyday with. But I'm gonna kind of wrap my recommendations around some of the answers that came up the most. First category is gonna be about some childhood favorites, which I am starting with this one because I feel very much the same. A feel-good book for me is something that I loved a long time ago that I still love now. And I have kind of a mixture of some of my old feel-good favorites in this list as well as some of my new favorites, but they're still books for children. So Just Ella is a retelling of Cinderella. It's a middle grade book, and it's a retelling of Cinderella, and it's about this girl after the ball, after Cinderella is technically over as we know it, and now she's been swept away. She lives in the castle and she's having princess training, but now that she's here, she realizes this is not all that it's cracked up to be. And also this prince that I thought I was in love with after one night of dancing, he's not that cool. I won out. And I really, really love this story. I mean, it is middle grade. So I don't know how I'd feel about it if I read it for the first time now, but it makes me feel good every time I read it. Harry Potter is a series that has tons of nostalgia for me. I don't need to tell you what it's about, but rereading it is always just very cozy and feel good for me. And some recent favorites that I think fit into this category, even though they don't have technical nostalgia for me, they feel nostalgic because they're so warm and cozy and childlike. There's The Boy, the Horse, the Mole, the Fox. I think that's the right order this time. Maybe I should just look at it. Oh wow, I was totally wrong. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. I've talked about this a lot, so I'll keep it really brief. It's intended where children and adults can read it, and it has this beautiful art style, and it takes these really complex and deep concepts, and it boils it down into these simple pages, these simple ways of saying it, but still packs such a big impact. And really, this book is full of things that make me think and make me reflect and just make me feel so good. And then Winnie the Pooh, which I read for the first time as an adult, and it's especially the first two books that are full stories. You have 2 books of stories and 2 books of poems, and the 2 books of stories are so cozy and they feel so good and warm and happy. And it also has a lot of stuff that kind of makes me pause and reflect. And it's nonsense, but in the most cozy way. Next, we have optimistic fantasy where violence is subdued. I have a few of these, I think. Violence isn't something that really bothers me, and so I'm not positive that I've done the best job, but I think all of these have subdued violence. We have the Wayward Children series, which is a series of very short books about children who enter into magical doorways, Narnia-esque, and they each go into a world that's unique and perfect for them. And we start, book 1 is them all in an orphanage because they've left their world and now they're back in the real world, and this isn't where they belong. They want back to where they came from. And then each other book is exploring the world. So I didn't really like book 1, but I have loved all the rest of them. I don't necessarily think that they're the most, I don't know, they're not necessarily the best written books. Maybe that's too harsh. I really like this author. She wrote some great books. It's not that I think that they're brilliantly constructed. It's just that the worlds in each of these stories are so unique and so much fun to explore that I love each time I enter a new one of these. The House of the Cerulean Sea, which I am still currently reading, but this is such a cozy, warm book about children who have magical abilities, and so they're in this orphanage, and it follows this man who is kind of like a caseworker. He's meant to check in on them and make sure that everything is running smoothly. And this book is described by one of the mods on my Patreon server who has convinced us all to read this book as reading this book feels like a warm hug. A Wizard of Earthsea, which is a book that didn't work for me, but it's a classic fantasy fantasy, and as I remember it, it's not very gratuitous, but it's just like a fun adventure, which is definitely fits into this theme. And A Never-Ending Story, another classic fantasy that I'm pretty sure is pretty subdued in violence as I remember it. And again, it's a lot like A Wizard of Earthsea in that it's a really fun adventure. This one's a little bit more nonsensical and all over the place, but in a fun way. Again, it wasn't my favorite book, but it fits into this theme really well. Lighthearted and sweet relationships slash family moments, humor and human connection. For this, I chose the Little Women series as well as the any Jane Austen book. I think both of these classic sets they both have a lot of focus on family. I mean, all of Jane Austen's books are standalones, but each of them has a big focus on family. And obviously Little Women, if you know anything about it, is very centered around family. And both of these sets of books are so cozy and warm, and just every time I enter a Jane Austen book and when I've read Little Women, I just feel like I'm entering fall. Does that make sense? Is that a weird description? I don't know how to describe feel-good things. I feel like I've entered into something that just feels good, that just feels right. It feels comfortable when I enter into these stories. They're the perfect amount of fun and ridiculousness as well as just feel good. Also, I recommend for this On the Fence, which is a YA romance that I loved the first time I read it, and I've reread it a few times. And this is about a girl and her family, and she has, I think, 4 brothers, and she's being raised by her dad, and so she's like one of the guys, but then she gets this job where she meets girlfriends and kind of has these 2 opposing sides of her, where she's athletic and one of the guys, and then realizes that she actually kind of likes dressing up and enjoys hanging out with girls as well. So there's a big focus on family as well as her kind of coming of age and rediscovering herself or discovering new sides of herself. As well as a really, really, really cute romance. This one came up a lot, people saying that books that are really environmental felt very warm and cozy to them, which, man, I agree with that. Some really environmental books are The Starless Sea, which I feel like exploring the different elements of this world and being fully immersed in them in the environment and the writing style is really what makes this book what it is. Again, it wasn't a book that was a perfect hit for me, but I loved sinking into the different places that we explored in The Starless Sea and this writing style, and I think that that's easily the strongest part about this. I also have The Bear and the Nightingale on this list, which again isn't exactly the story for me, but it's very, very environmental. It's a winter setting book, and I think that, again, the writing style and the environment are what shine about this book and what makes this book so strong. And then I can't remember the name. I'm gonna have to look up the name in editing, but this is the only book that I could think of that has a cozy beach town feel that is also kind of feel good. I mean, it starts out a little bit dark, but I think it's a feel-good book. Also, if you know of any really cozy beach town books, please talk about them in the comments. Please recommend them in the comments, because cozy beach town is one of my favorite tropes, and I really couldn't think of very many books that have that I've read. This one specifically is about this beach town that has a curse on it where like men go and drown every so often, but everybody refuses to leave because like this is their home. And I think it's such an interesting setting, and even without that creepy setting, the cozy hometown, no one wants to leave despite what's going on in the town. This is one of my favorite tropes, so if you know of those, please recommend, because that's very feel good for me. And something else that came up a lot is humor. Something that feels good to them, that feels cozy to them, is something that just makes them laugh, which I definitely understand. Recommendations for that: Murderbot. I have a review for the first 2 novellas, link up there. This is a sci-fi story about a robot who is supposed to be escorting humans and keeping them alive, and it's jokingly started referring to itself as Murderbot, and it's such a dry, witty humor that just cracks me up. Also, I'm currently reading Good Omens. Well, I just started Good Omens, and this book is absurd and insane and hilarious. And because I know that this is something that Daniel really likes, I asked him for some recommendations too. He said definitely recommend Discworld. He also recommends Bobverse, which is on my list. He's told me to read this many, many times, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And we're gonna end this on cozy murder mysteries, which is not my forte, so I only have one recommendation for you, and that's And Then There Were None. I thought that this was such a feel-good mystery, And Then There Were None was so much fun to me. It's a group of people that go off onto this island. They're all kind of tricked into being there for different reasons, and then based around this children's rhyme, they're being picked off one by one in ways that reflect the rhyme. And it's so creepy, but not in a scary way, just in a draws you closer, makes you want to keep reading way. But also the way it's written feels cozy and feels exciting and fun. I don't know, Agatha Christie hit the tone perfectly for this. But there you go, those are some cozy books that make me feel good. Hopefully you'll get some good recommendations off of this. Also, I would love to hear what are some feel-good books for you guys, because that's what I'm in the mood for right now, and that's what I'm picking up right now. Be sure to continue chatting with me about this in the comments. Check out my Patreon, linked in the description, if you want to do some buddy reads with me or see some of my own writing. I'm currently sharing a murder mystery that I've been writing. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.